Hi, I'm Lauren Bennett from LSP Actions, Lemon Sky Photography, Focus Styling and Enchanty Pics. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you some tips for when it comes to compositing a newborn into a digital background using one of the Enchanty Pics library's digital backgrounds. So let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a digital background. These are all flat JPEG images. They are created with AI. So I'm going to go ahead and click that one. As with all AI images, there may be some slight imperfections in the image and things like that, but I'm going to show you a few tips. You can also watch the other short tutorials for when it comes to expanding the canvas, removing objects, blurring and so forth. So go ahead and open the digital background in Photoshop. I'm just dragging that in from a downloads folder and we've got that there. If you want to change the size of the digital background, you can go ahead and crop, but if it's something like this, I recommend only cropping out a little bit. I'm just going to hold down Shift when I crop. You can access crop by hitting C on your keyboard or from the menu panel over here on the left, the crop tool. Sometimes it might do something a little bit funky, like we see up here. This is a bit weird, so I'm going to go ahead and grab Patch tool, which is on the spot healing brush, and grab this. If you have the LSP Action Select and Fix action, this is a great time to use it. But because this is a hand editing tutorial, I'm just showing you how to do this with the Patch tool. I'm now going to grab the clone stamp by hitting S on my keyboard, the clone stamp here, and just clone some of this background in. We're just neatening up this area. Don't worry too much about the textures for now because I'm going to use Patch tool and clone stamp. I'm just making kind of an outline here around these leaves. But in the final edit of this, I'm going to actually blur this background down a little bit to create a depth of field so it doesn't matter too much. I'm just patching. So the patch tool is great because what it does is it will replace the texture of an area, the lights and the shadows, but it won't replace the colour. So we're just fixing that area a little bit, but you can go ahead and watch some other video tutorials for how to fix areas in a digital background. So we're going to be adding a baby to the bowl, which means a lot of this is going to be hidden. So go ahead and open up the baby image, and I shot this baby on a Perfect Posy. That's by Graceland Designs. It's really great for compositing for digital backgrounds if you want to shoot especially for digitals to kind of bump up your client gallery. Go ahead and edit the skin, anything else that needs tweaking, and save that. So if you need to edit any red blotches, any flakes, any scratches, anything like that, please go ahead and do your normal editing first before adding a newborn to a digital background. Save that image on your computer, come up to File and choose Place Embedded and locate that newborn image. And double click to add. And what that's going to do, it's going to add it here in your Layers panel as a layer above the digital background. If you can't see your Layers panel, come up to Window and hit Layers. Layers are like layers of paper, stacked one on top of the other, so we see this is the photograph here. Now the first important thing you need to do is make sure the light direction matches. So for this digital background you can see the light is coming from the left. Imagine the light shining this way, the shadows are here, the light is here. In this newborn image the light is actually coming from the right. So what I need to do is come up to Edit, Transform and choose Flip Horizontal, just to make sure the light is matching. You can also do this for the background if you don't want to flip the newborn image. At this stage I like to bring the opacity down a little bit, Edit, Transform, Free Transform, or you can hit Control or Command T on your keyboard, and this is where you're going to resize, rotate and move around this baby image to fit nicely in the digital background. You really do want, if it's a bowl or something like this, you do want baby filling that area. If you've shot, head on hands, you're doing a bucket pose from the front, maybe baby's laying on their side and you're compositing, you still want them to fit nicely into the area. You don't want them to be too big or too small, you want them to be just right, which is why it's good to shoot baby kind of curled up like this rather than in a straight line, so getting those arms and legs curled in cute. Next thing we want to do, because we've obviously still got the newborn background, the newborn image here and the digital behind, so next thing you want to do is make a selection of the newborn. If you're using an older version of Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, you may have to use a lasso tool to make this selection, like this. Steady hand, but you can always add to the selection by holding down Shift and adding a little bit more in. And if you need to, say, take a little bit away, hold down Alt and you can remove an area. So go ahead and do your selection. If you're on Creative Cloud, you can use the quick selection tool, or you can try select subject. Select subject sometimes works really well, sometimes it doesn't. In this example it doesn't, it thinks that all this is a subject too. So we're going to use the quick selection tool instead, and I'm just going to drag this over the baby, holding down my mouse, and that's picked up a really nice selection. At this stage it doesn't matter if the selection's a little bit screwy, try and get it as good as you can. If it's not perfect, we're going to be using a layer mask so we can add and take away from that selection. So I'm just holding down Alt to remove a few areas and holding Shift to add areas in. Once you have your selection, I'm just going to add a little bit more there. I'm hitting W on my keyboard to bring that quick selection tool back up again. Once you have the basic selection, come down and add a layer mask. This is the little option on the bottom of your layers panel that looks like a rectangle with a circle inside. And once that's done, it's added a layer mask, a little bit like a lotto scratch card. Black means hide, so you can see this is the image is still there, but it's hidden everything around the outside, and it's just shown the selection of the baby. At this point again, you can grab Move tool and you can position baby in using the transform, just to make sure you're happy with that position of baby in the bowl. So I'm just moving baby in there. And now we're going to refine this selection a little better. You can see up here around the head it's a little bit funky. So on Photoshop Creative Cloud, come up to Filter and hit, come up to Select and hit Select and Mask. If you're on an older version of Photoshop, Select and Mask will look a little something like this. Oh no, it's not coming up, but it will come up as just one little window with a brush. It's the same brush here, the Refine Edge brush, and you can drag this around any areas of hair or fur that you want to refine in your image. Sometimes it works really well, other times not so well. But not to worry too much at this stage because we're going to be doing some blending. So when you're happy with your selection, hit OK. It's added it straight to the layer mask. It might have added it as marching ants, in which case you'll need to paint it in. Because this baby has been photographed on a darker background, we're actually going to bring a little bit of that in and use it as shadows. So I'm going to show you a little bit of advanced editing now. Something else I'd like to do is bring some of these leaves over the top of baby, and we can do that by masking certain areas of the baby image away like this, but we're going to do it a little bit better. So first off, let's add some shadows around baby, and I'm going to do that by grabbing a white brush, and I'm going to actually bring some of the original background in. Now it's going to look like brown fur, but we're going to adapt that a little bit because baby was shot on this brown plush. So I'm using a white brush set to normal 100% opacity, say around 25% flow, on the layer mask of the baby image on a white brush, and I'm just really lightly stroking some of this in, especially around areas that need masking properly, such as the hair, back of the ear, any shadows like that. So I can bring it in fully there because we already have some texture. So at this point you can just look around and you can think, where can you bring some of the original background in? Really lightly stroking that in. Composite editing is something that's a little different every time. If you do a lot of newborn digital backgrounds, you might want to go over to the LSP Actions website and buy the newborn digital composite kit, because that comes with full tutorials, way more in depth than this. It comes with actions helping you apply and blend the baby image and all sorts of things like that. And that is over at www.lsp-actions.com, and it's designed especially for newborn photographers. So I'm just adding some of this in here because this is where some natural shadows would be anyway. Ooh, I made my brush too big. So just dabbing that in. The next thing we want to do is actually darken this blanket around baby so it matches the digital more. In your case, you might want to lighten the image. So down on here, the little circle half and half, this is your adjustment menu. I'm going to add a levels layer. I'm going to right click the levels and create a clipping mask to the newborn there. So make sure it's sat above and you create that clipping mask, because what this will do now, it will only affect that newborn masking layer that you've popped in there. And what I'm going to do is going to add some darkness in by sliding these left and middle sliders down, and I'm not worried about the skin right now. I'm watching around the edges because I want this to turn into a shadow. Click back on the levels layer mask, Control or Command I to invert, and grab a brush set to white. We're going to very carefully paint this around the outside of the baby. You want a nice soft brush, so if a little bit of it kind of goes over the baby, it's going to look more natural. So that's just darkening that background. That's a tip if you've used a posing aid such as the Perfect Posy, just to add some of these natural shadows in. If you find the shadows are looking a little bit funky, perhaps bringing out the reds on baby's skin, up here where it says to normal, that's your blend mode, you can change it to luminosity. And you will find it keeps that darkness, but it does bring it in a little bit more in line with the actual image. So next up, I'm just going to actually, I can just see here there's a little bit around the foot that's a bit strange, so it is always good to zoom in and take a look. Next up, I want to bring some of these plant leaves around the baby, so I'm going to click the eye next to baby just to hide that layer for a moment, and click on the background, grab the quick selection tool again, and I'm just going to bring this over these leaves. And don't worry if it's selecting some funky stuff, because you can hold down Alt and just hone that selection in a little bit by dragging it over the areas you don't want to select. If you hit Alt means no for Photoshop, it means omit, leave it out. So we selected those leaves. It's not the best selection, it's not the worst. So let's turn baby layer back on, go onto the layer mask. I'm going to switch to a black brush with this selection still active, and I'm going to choose to hide the areas of baby so these show through, and it will give the impression of the leaves coming over the top of the baby. At this point you might want to zoom in and grab a brush and maybe make it harder and just refine that selection a bit. Remember, white means show and black means hide, so I'm using black because I'm painting away areas of this baby image in order to show the leaves underneath. If you hold down X, like hover your finger over X on your keyboard while you're using the brush, you can quickly switch from black to white really easily. So I'm just making that into a leaf shape. It was in the shadows, so I'm just using that to make a leaf shape. So now we have some of those leaves coming over the baby. The next thing we're going to want to do is add some shadows over the baby too. So go down here on your adjustments, you could click curves or levels. It's already clipped in because it's underneath the clipping mask, but if you added it above, you can right click and choose create clipping mask to make sure that this only affects that baby. So I'm just going to drag the middle slider down a little bit, just darkening, and I'm going to set this blend mode to luminosity as well so we have a better darken there. Control or Command I to invert that layer mask to black, grab your brush, set to white, nice and soft. And I'm just going to use this to just add some shadows around the baby, especially here under these leaves. Just nestle baby in. Composite editing is about the shadows. If you can get your shadows right and the light direction right, then it's going to be very believable. Even if it's a fantastical image, even if you know the image is definitely not a real background, if you can nestle baby in, it's going to form that lovely art piece that you're after. So I'm going to add an even darker shadow, and I'm going to do that by using levels, bringing that middle slider down, that's the mid-tones, and this bottom right slider in a bit, that's how your image registers white, so I'm just going to turn that grayer. Control or Command I to invert. And let's add a nice shadow underneath these leaves, using a white brush, because I want to show that. Again, this just makes it a little more realistic around the baby there. Now over to the digital background. Let's edit this a little bit. So I'm going to click on the digital and I'm going to add another levels layer over on the adjustments, and I'm going to use this to add some shadows to the digital. So look, this is because it's underneath the baby layer down here in your layers panel, it's only affecting the digital background. So I'm just going to bring the middle slider down a little bit, Control or Command I to invert, grab your brush, set to white, and I'm just going to add some shadows in there. So that's adding some shadows to the digital background too. Nestling baby in even more. Now I think what I'd like to do is blur the background a little bit, not the bowl but the floor. So I'm going to right click on the digital background and hit duplicate layer. So we're working on a duplicate version of it. And to add the blur, I'm going to right click and actually convert this to a smart object. And this means when we add a blur filter, it comes with its own layer mask and option, so you can change it a bit more if you need to. So click on filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and decide the level of blur you want for your image. So I recommend bringing it right down and starting to come up. This is also great if you've got any strange AI kind of artifacts in that image. Just blur them out in the background to replicate that depth of field. How about we go about 6.8 there. Now that has added a lovely blur, but it's also blurred the bowl as well. So click on the mask. This is the filter mask. It works exactly the same way as a layer mask. Set your brush to black, nice and hard. And I'm just going to use this to just dab over the bowl. So that's hiding the blur effect from the bowl. You can also use this to carefully come over any other areas that would not be affected by a lens blur there. And there we go. So there's a digital background before and after. Here's the newborn image before and after added in. And you can add any more editing layers if you want to just make them blend a little bit more. So for example on the newborn you can add some levels. I'm just going to add some brightness to the face, so I've added a bright levels layer there. Slid the middle slider up, white brush, nice and soft, and I'm just adding a little bit of brightness in. And again, if you want to learn more about newborn editing, you can visit the LSP Actions website over at lspactions.com, and there you can find signature newborn editing, digital backgrounds. You can find the digital background composite kit. You can find everything basically for newborn photographers when it comes to editing over there. So I hope that tutorial helped. You can follow along with your own digital backgrounds using your own images. Obviously the results will vary depending on what digital background you use, what newborn image you use, but the tips that I've used in this tutorial should really hopefully help you when it comes to editing and compositing and blending two images together in Photoshop. I'm Lauren, thanks for watching.